Welcome to the Sunday service of the Unitarian Universalists of Clearwater, located on the land of the Tocobaga. Very special greetings to those who are with us the first time. I'm Ray Williamson, Worship Associate for this morning. Like my haircut? I got it for Christmas. My personal pronouns are he, him, and his, but in person, you can call me Ray. In welcoming you to our spiritual home, we want you to know that this Unitarian Universalist congregation is where seekers find a home. We are guided not by a creed, but by principles. Whatever we individually believe, we Unitarian Universalists are committed to this liberal religion, to this community, to each other, to equality in race, gender presentation, sexual orientation, and economic status, and to helping make the world a better place to live. This is a sacred time that we share together, each in our own spaces made sacred by our communal spirit. And now for our prelude, Why We Sing. Our call to worship starts with a poem, The Road Not Taken, by Robert Frost. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had warned them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves, no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that made all the difference. We Unitarian Universalists share a faith, not in the one true path, but in the freedom to choose, and the worth of every life made unique by those choices. Now, how to choose? On what basis? And what then? We see the paths, we reason, we feel, we create meaning, we choose. The title for today's talk, Explanation and Experience. As the poets of song tell us, we may never pass this way again. There is a road, no simple highway, between the dawn and the dark of night. But if you go, no one may follow. That path is for your steps alone. There are places I'll remember. Some have gone and some remain. Some may come and some may go. We shall surely pass when the one that's left us here returns for us at last. We are but a moment's sunlight fading in the grass. Come on, people, now. Smile on your brother. Everybody get together. Try to love one another right now. Come, let us worship together. And now I ask Lori Ergel to light this chalice to remind us of our many opportunities to illuminate the world, to turn the light of our mindful attention on the blessings of existence in this world: food, birdsong, friendship, laughter, music, literature, family, and to illuminate the worlds of others with our own lights: kindness, generosity, humor, a love for justice, nurturing youth, and respectful listening. We take in light, find meaning, and send it back transformed. And now our opening hymn, Gather the Spirit. This is a time when we can share the contents of our hearts with the congregation. If you have a joy or a sorrow, please contact the UUC office by Thursday to have it included in Sunday's service. For today, Ned Bellamy writes, "Many of you know that Carol Fitzsimmons is recovering from a stroke she suffered at home a month ago. She's been making progress, particularly with her speech, physicality, and outlook. On Thursday, Encompass Health Rehabilitation Hospital in Largo informed us that Carol has tested positive for COVID-19. Carol's nurse and roommate tested positive as well. Carol's had a cough since Monday, but as of yesterday, she had no fever and x-rays indicate that her lungs are clear. It would mean a lot to Carol if she knew that her beloved congregation is aware of her challenging circumstances and that we are holding her in our hearts. Phone calls are still sporadic and unpredictable. Cards and notes continue to be the best connection with her in these pandemic times. As we learn about any changes in Carol's condition, we'll share it with you for now in Sunday service." And I ask for a moment of silence as we hold in our hearts compassion for those who are beset and suffering, and as we also share in gratitude for milestones reached and blessings received. Our silence will conclude as we sing along to "Filled with Loving Kindness."
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole.
Your donations are appreciated and are an important source of funding for the many ministries of our congregation. Since we are not meeting in person, your offerings will be accepted through a link that you will find on your screen as we play the offertory music, Playera by Enrique Granados. Today's speaker, Robert Palin, and his wife, Carol, live in Dunedin since 2003. He is a retired minister serving the United Church of Christ for 42 years. He holds a BA from Middlebury College, a Master's in Divinity from Union Theological Seminary in New York City, a Doctor of Ministry from NYTS, also in New York City. He has 3 children, 4 grandkids, all in New York City and Long Island, and is an avid amateur pianist, a participant in a local discussion group called News and Views, still pursuing common ground and common good. Join me in welcoming Reverend Robert Palin.
These are strange times, adjusting to an invisible and insidious virus and adjusting to the economic and social consequences from it. Added to the strange times are the strangers we meet along the way, hoping to get something out of what they have to say. So good morning, I'm Robert Palin, just such a stranger, invited by a couple esteemed members of your fellowship back in January, before the crises we face now confronted us with its strangeness. I'm glad to be here to share some thoughts that I hope you will think are important. We've been facing so many differences for years, differences that are framed by what we think about politics, economics, religion, ethics, social variations, race, class. I want to suggest that these topics are framed by explanations that we accept or reject, or at least ponder. I'm hoping in the next few minutes to distinguish between the explanations and the experiences we each deal with daily. The feelings that grip us in the gut don't always align with what we think or hear from others, or what we say we know and the explanations others tell us. So on the one hand, we explain this and that to others, looking for solidarity, agreement. On the other hand, we know that others do not and probably cannot feel what we are experiencing. What are we to do with these differences, these distinctions, these disconnects? How about trying to come together through greater awareness and consciousness of our common ground? So my first point has to deal with common ground, this pandemic, this virus, this threat to body and mind that is challenging all of us. However, the various explanations to us available reveal uncertainty, ambiguity, and confusion, clash of perspectives. So there's the scientific attempt to employ best practices for public health. And we are also admitting ignorance about the full nature of this novel virus on the one hand. And on the other hand, there are the political, economic imperatives to go back to work, to get the economy up and running, even if we claim to be aware of the increases in infection and death. Some of us are still willing to claim to accept collateral damage in belief that the strong will prevail. And implicitly, you hope to be one of the strong. Good luck on that. We have come to a sense of common ground in order to support a path to the common good. In my thinking, common ground is our experience, the inescapable and universal need for food, sanitation, shelter, safety, health is basic to function. What comes next is the so what of our experience. What we do with our health is a matter of agreeing upon a common good. So to me, the common good is a useful way of explaining what to do with our common ground. I realize that this is kind of abstract, so let me use 3 human examples who wrestled with explanations, which I also call frameworks, of what the day thought, as they honored their experience of what mattered to them. And my 3 people are Eric Arthur Blair, Søren Kierkegaard, and Dorothy Day. Eric Arthur Blair was born in 1903 in Bengal, India. His dad was an officer in the British Imperial Police. At the age of 1, Eric's mother moved him and his sisters to England, while his father completed his career in Bengal. Eric received a solid education at Eton Preparatory School. Instead of going to Oxford or Cambridge, he chose to go to Burma, then part of India. He got a taste of authority, following in his father's footsteps. But young Eric didn't like his experience. He wrote about it in his published essay called The Shooting of an Elephant. His job dictated that he had to shoot the noble animal. But he thought that was simply wrong, and he had many such gut-wrenching experiences during his 5 years in Burma. So he decided to go home to England, and he announced he wasn't going back. He would not be part of the empire's imperial police. He would give up job security and a good pension. His dad was very disappointed and considered Eric a failure. So young Eric decided to explore failure to see if it agreed with him. For a number of years, he lived among the poor as one of them. In time, he wrote a book called Down and Out in Paris and London. He felt awkward about writing his raw experiences, so he fictionalized some of his writing to protect real people from getting hurt. In the 30s, he joined the resistance to Franco's regime, and he got shot in the neck. That ended his war experience. During these years, he wanted to protect his family back home from notoriety, which was thoughtful of him. So he settled upon a common English name, George. And also he used the name of a river near where he'd grown up and had loved spending time there, namely the Orwell River. So Eric Arthur Blair becomes George Orwell. You know about Animal Farm, a thinly veiled satire against the authoritarian regime of Stalin. And you know about the dystopian novel 1984, which Orwell finished writing in 1948 and simply switched the 4 and the 8 to be the title of his novel. and that was at the age of 45. He died of TB in 1950, not quite 47 years old. My point is that Eric Arthur Blair illustrated the power of his personal experience to counter the explanations of the day that tended toward empire, classism, authoritarianism, denigration of the poor who did the dirty work for the privileged and powerful. He was buried in a churchyard, not as George Orwell, but as Eric Arthur Blair. On to Søren Kierkegaard, who lived during the first half of the 19th century in Denmark. He focused on his personal experiences of dread, melancholy, and unrequited love. His father left him sufficient money so that he didn't need to make a livelihood. He attacked Christianity of his time, although he'd spent 10 years studying theology. Dramatically, he fell in love with Regina Olsen, a real beauty. After he won her heart, he set about getting her to hate him, and it worked. She felt dreadfully abused. He felt guilty and spent the remainder of his life writing thousands of pages about human suffering and dying of TB in 1855, donating his estate to Regina Olsen, exactly as if he had been married to her. In 1877, a Danish literary critic brought his writings to a wider European audience. Perhaps you're familiar with Either or, Fear and Trembling, or The Sickness Unto Death. By the mid-20th century, Kierkegaard rose from obscurity to be known as what some considered him to be, namely the father of existentialism. His point of view merely expresses the depths of suffering that he experienced viscerally. On to Dorothy Day, known for her publication of The Catholic Worker. She was alarmed by poverty all her life. She came to support socialist ideology in her early adulthood, but at the age of 30, she converted to Catholicism as the framework for supporting her life among the poor for the remainder of her last 50 years, dying at the age of 83. She is controversial for being equal parts Catholic and worker. She accepted Catholic social doctrine against abortion and varying sexual expressions. However, she stood up for the poor as human beings with every bit as much right to life as the privileged and powerful, yet without their greed and corruption. We see in Daly how experience figured prominently in sustaining the means of her livelihood, which was living for and among the poor. And aren't we baffled by the significance of explanations for the common good in light of an individual's experience of our common ground? In conclusion, we are all individuals who share common ground. Exceptional individuals like Blair, Kierkegaard, Day follow some internal, visceral imperative that is more dynamic than the philosophies, politics, and conventions of the day. I think you and I need to discern what is important in our own experiences so that we will be less tossed around by the explanations that purport to stand in for our experiences. I think discernment of our common good can give rise to a healthier framework for the common good. Thank you for your attention, peace, and well-being to all of you.
Now, as I ask Lori to extinguish this chalice, please share with me our closing benediction. Go in peace, go making peace, live gently, love mightily, and bow to the mystery.